That's facts.
So last time we were going through your list of books, but I forgot to ask about your PhD. So we went from master's in physics at Cambridge to business leader.
No, Oxford.
I mean Oxford.
Yeah, but it was Oxford. Yeah.
And so where did the PhD fit in archaeology?
Yeah. Are we recording?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, the PhD in archaeology was very late on, because after I did my master's at Oxford, I actually went into international business and did that for 25 years before deciding to move on, as I was very much feeling that something was coming through. I could feel an emergent sort of sense of a shift of awareness coming through. And I just wanted to play my part and serve whatever may come through for human and consciousness, and how we might, as a result, be able to heal our relationships with ourselves, with each other, and above all with our planetary home, our beloved Gaia. So when I left business, one of the things that occurred to me, as I've been fascinated by ancient understanding and indigenous understanding of realities, and so I really wanted to bring them into a level of credibility in terms of the ancient cosmologies. And so that's why I did the archaeology PhD at the University of Reading in the UK, who are very senior in terms of the quality of their archaeological department. So that's what I did. And I researched a PhD on the transition from the Mesolithic, or the Middle Stone Age, to the Neolithic, or the New Stone Age, because at that shift, people were shifting between being hunter-gatherers and becoming farmers. So the whole perspective of time and space and position in the world and relationship, animals were being domesticated, plants were being domesticated, people were beginning to settle down. So it was a major shift in how we viewed ourselves and the cosmos around us. So that fascinated me.
Where did the Great Mother fit in that transition? The ancestors of the Venus figurine and the fertility figure.
Well, first of all, certainly the further back we go, and Gimbutas wrote a lot about this, we see across the whole of Europe this sense of a primordial mother goddess. But more and more now, we're finding artifacts that at first was seen to be feminine, but actually are becoming understood now to be more and more both masculine and feminine.
Androgynous.
So when, for example, we look at a lot of the artifacts in Malta, which are very ancient, and elsewhere, we see these broad-breasted, wide-hipped, feminine figures, but instead of a head, they effectively have a penis. So you're actually melding the masculine and the feminine. And there's a lot of sort of understanding that actually, as we go further back, there was more balance of the masculine and the feminine. So it wasn't so much a shift from feminine to masculine, it was about becoming out of balance. Whereas the feminine and the masculine had been in balance. And certainly whenever I've worked with indigenous peoples around the world, from Alaska to Australasia, there is that balance of feminine and masculine. It's not, the feminine has predominance and the masculine doesn't. No, it's the balance. And so more and more it looks as though it's that balance that moved, not in the early Neolithic, but as the Neolithic went on, and especially as the Neolithic then gave way to the Bronze Age. Because in the Bronze Age we start seeing weapons. And in the Bronze Age we start seeing people of status, rather than a communal buryings, we start to see primarily masculine burials, and primarily burials with goods of status and weapons. And so the incidence of conflicts became more and clearer. And there was this, the masculine dominance was certainly coming forward through that time.
Indigenous peoples have given prophecy about kind of end time, and I wondered if you're finding that's playing out in current events, or if it's just symbolic, or what you think about those kind of indigenous prophecies.
I think there's a great deal of wisdom to them. I mean, what the indigenous peoples have been is they've been the wisdom keepers of our fundamental relationship with our planetary home, with Gaia. Whereas we have essentially separated ourselves from Gaia and acted accordingly, they have not. They've always perceived this balance again, you know, whether it's the Aini, the South American peoples, with Pachamama, their relationship is with the whole cosmos. The whole cosmos is a family, is a web of life, is a family. So it's like Papa Inti, Father Sun, Pachamama, Mother Earth, or in the Native American traditions, Grandfather Sun and Grandmother Moon. So either way, indigenous peoples have seen the whole of life as being profoundly interconnected. And so they have held that wisdom for us. And their perspective now is I think, a mixed one. On the one hand, they're incredibly sad that we've taken so long to begin to listen and wake up. On the other hand, they're also realizing that to do that and to have any opportunity to survive and thrive, we need to come together. And some of their prophecies talk about all the colours of all the tribes coming together. And the other thing that the Hopi elders say is the choices, you know, and the Mayans, so many of them say the choice is ours. You know, it's not someone else's choices. We are the ones we've been waiting for. It's our choice, and that's where we're at. So I find Indigenous elders and Indigenous peoples, on the one hand, incredibly inspirational, and on many other ways, deeply hurt by how we have treated Gaia and them over so many years. And it's time for us to listen. It's time for us finally to wake up and do all we can to restore our relationship, to heal our relationship with Gaia and each other, and act accordingly. You know, instead of coming from this perception of separation, which is an illusion, we remember the ultimate oneness of all that is, and its expression in radical, abundant diversity. And we celebrate the web of life and honour and respect and serve the web of life.
Does it make you hopeful that young climate activists like Greta Thunberg are raising this issue, or do you think we only have a decade to turn things around and we probably won't, so that makes you a pessimist? Where do you stand on our situation today?
I'm a realistic optimist, I think. I'm delighted that Greta and so many, many, many more, it shouldn't have taken a 16-year-old to raise this. It should have been something that we had done something about a very long time ago. And I am ashamed, actually, of my generation for not doing so. Having said that, there's enough blame to go round. And so I'd rather spend my efforts not in placing the blame game and continuing the tit for tat of duality-based perceptions, and not working with the 1% of the 99%, but actually acknowledging that we're all the 100%. So in my work, it's very much about linking up and lifting up to welcome everyone who wants to be part of the hope in action for regenerative and restorative action. Whether we survive or thrive, if we go into the good night, I want to go into the good night at least with peace in my heart that I've done everything I can to serve and be of help and be a force for positive good and transformation, rather than either a skeptic or a pessimist or just lay back and say so what or whatever. I just rather show up, get out of the way, and link up and lift up with as many folks who are feeling this invitation to be the better angels of our nature and come together and do what we can. Because even if humanity doesn't survive, surely we owe it to our children and grandchildren to try and help them as much as we can. And surely, even if that doesn't happen, to help our beloved Gaia, who is, after all, our first mother, to do so, and all her other children.
Mm-hmm. I think this will tie into your book, Cosmos, A Co-Creator's Guide to the Whole World, with Evan Lasso.
Mm-hmm.
What was that book about?
Well, it was like the hors d'oeuvre to the Cosmic Hologram. it was one of the first times that, you know, I set out this idea of reality being innately informed and holographically manifested, but it was very much a very early perspective of that. And in it, Irvin and I, as its subtitle suggests, a co-creator's guide to the whole world. So we did talk about the possibility of future trends from a co-creative evolutionary perspective. What would it mean in finance and economics? And it's a very slim book. It's a very straightforward book, but it lays out, I hope, some simple ways that, you know, everybody says everything's too complicated. It really isn't. It's simple. It's just the choices. We see the choices as being difficult because they call on us to be different, to behave differently. But actually, the choices we face are pretty simple. And, you know, reality, as Einstein once said, is as simple as it can be, but no simpler. Life is complex. A human being is complex. A human doing tends to be complicated. So let's simplify it down and realize that there are some simple but foundational and fundamental things we can do to change.
Like have electric cars rather than gas-burning cars?
No, like love each other rather than hate each other.
Or both?
Yeah. Because it seems to me that our beliefs drive our behaviours. So by buying into a myth of separation, we behave accordingly. So everything we do comes from that perspective. Whether it's scarcity that doesn't need to be there, whether it's conflicts that don't need to be there, whether it's a fear of the other that doesn't need to be the case, or whether it's technologies that come from this perspective of separation. You know, nature, Gaia, is the most incredible and best technologist we know of. Our universe is the best technology we know of. So cosmomimicry, biomimicry, seeing what Mother Nature does, we can learn so much if we're willing to get off our arrogant high horse with our complicated technologies and be open to the complex but foundationally simple technologies which abound throughout Mother Nature's systems. She doesn't waste anything. She doesn't pollute anything. Everything is part of this intermeshed web of life. But by hearing and listening to her, we can actually learn so much and actually transform in ways that, you know, with our perspective of separation, we have no idea about how to do.
Let's go to the Cosmic Hologram then and take some of the key points. When Deepak Chopra spoke at the IONS conference in July, he said the most popular theory today about the universe and physics is the multi-universe. But you approach it from the point of view of the universe as a hologram, and the information is stored at like the second two-dimensional edges of black holes. So what does mainstream physics think about holographic versus multi-universe?
Well, they're not irreconcilable at all. They're two different things. The multiverse is basically a premise. It's not proven, it's highly speculative, but it's a premise that an infinite and eternal cosmos has as finite universes within it, like bubbles, yes? Or like droplets within a great ocean on a vast, ultimately infinite scale. So all a multiverse is saying is there may be other universes beyond our own, okay?
But it's a device to allow avoiding consciousness in a way.
It was in many ways the original supposition of it really was made by people who wanted to avoid perceiving our universe as essentially conscious. Nonetheless, we could still consider that an infinite cosmos, that the infinite mind, cosmic mind, actually creates finite thought forms that we call universes. Yeah?
Sure.
So it's because the idea came forward as a sort of an avoidance of consciousness, it doesn't mean that it actually, could be as part of a conscious cosmos. There are universes as thought forms. Yeah?
Yeah.
So our universe, and it may be that other universes too, are formed by cosmic mind as essentially intimately and innately informed. In other words, cosmic mind articulates its thought, its universal thought, in the form of digitized information, which is the simplest universal alphabet you could get, ones and zeros. But from those ones and zeros, all that we call reality is essentially co-created. And the laws of physics in this understanding are the algorithms. They're the operating software, as it were, for our universe. And so the evidence is pointing to our universe being fundamentally informed, that information is the basic stuff of reality, and holographically manifested, so that the appearance of 3 dimensions is actually a holographic projection by cosmic intelligence from the boundary of what we call space. So that model, the cosmic hologram model, sits naturally within a multiverse, within an infinite cosmos. And it shows very simply how cosmic mind thinks a universe into being. And a universe that is so perfectly set up that it literally exists to evolve from simplicity to complexity. And so it's a universe knowing itself, experiencing itself, yes, through this amazing diversity and individuated awareness, to the point that 13.8 billion years after it began, we're now having this conversation.
So you could say that God is a mathematician.
I could, and it's been said before, and God is a geometer, and you could use the word God as opposed to cosmic mind, but God is everything. Cosmic mind is everything. Mind and consciousness isn't something we have, it's literally what we and the whole world are. So whether you're comfortable with calling that God, or cosmic mind, or Allah, or Great Spirit, essentially it's all the same.
Why is the information located on a second two-dimensional edge of a black hole?
It's not on universal terms. The reason that the holographic principle as expressing the whole of the universe came about is that astronomers were looking at black holes, and they were trying to figure out what happened when a massive star collapsed within what's called an event horizon, where the gravity is so strong that even light can't escape, so it looks black. What happens to all that information? Does it disappear from space-time, in which case all our laws of physics are out the window? And what was discovered was actually all that information is held on the surface, the spherical surface of that black hole. And it's held there at the most tiniest, most minute scales, called the Planck scale, the Planck area. And that each tiny little tile, triangular tile, as it were, on the surface of that event horizon, holds one digitized bit of information. But it's so minute, it's as small as to an atom as an atom is to the entire universe. So, within the scale of the quantum scale of energy and matter, subatomic particles, there's absolutely huge amount of information, even at that level. So what was understood, that was the boundary, that was the maximum amount of information that could be held is on a two-dimensional surface area rather than what you think it would be held, which is the three-dimensional volume. And that then gave rise to this understanding, just as in a hologram, all the information that goes into the three-dimensional appearance of the hologram is held on a two-dimensional surface. So when astronomers put the two together, they extended and expanded this understanding about black holes to the size of the whole universe. And that's what's called the holographic principle, and that's what I talk about in the Cosmic Hologram, because the evidence that indeed the appearance, the 3D appearance of our universe actually is a holographic projection. It's no less real, it's just the simplest way to make a universe. It's no less real, but it's the simplest way to make a universe. The evidence is showing up at literally all scales of existence and many, many, many different fields of research. And that's what I write about in the Cosmic Hologram.
So these little Planck triangles that contain a bit of information, like a 0 or 1, are they everywhere there's matter?
Well, they're more than that. They're literally on the boundary of space. So, for example, if you go back 13.8 billion years ago, all of that information that makes up all the energy and matter of our universe was there at the get-go. Yeah? And over the last 13.8 billion years, it's not increased or decreased. It's just changed its form. Okay?
Expanded.
And got well, no, bear with me, and got ever more complex in its expression. So originally all the energy and matter was just hydrogen. Then stars formed and they started to synthesize heavier elements, which was their way of burning, producing energy. That then finally became the interstellar dust clouds from which our solar system was born. And so rocky planets and water, and so biological entities. But the overall amount of energy and matter in our universe has stayed constant all this time. It's just changed its form and got more and more complex expressions. Now, at that point, at that first point, the universe was at its smallest. And we talk about a big bang, but it wasn't big, and it wasn't a bang in the sense that it was explosive. It was more like an out-breath, a big breath. And that's vital because that enables our universe to evolve. If we're just talking about energy and matter and information expressed as energy and matter, our universe would exist. But what it needs to evolve is the expansion of space and the flow of time. So information is expressed in two complementary ways. As energy matter, which is conserved, and as space-time, which is what's called entropic. In other words, over time, space expands. And what that allows to happen is ever more informational content to be expressed within the universe. And that allows our universe to evolve. Otherwise, it couldn't do that. And the reason space needs to expand is that boundary of what we call space has to expand to enable ever more of those tiny little Planck scale tiles to come into being. In other words, for cosmic intelligence to express itself in ever more complex ways.
Mm-hmm. You also say that the universe is finite, flat, probably a toroid, which implies that it will end, and that implies that it could maybe go back to that little pea-sized shape in 13.8. So it could be just like a never.
No, that's not what cosmology is showing. There was a big debate for a long time. Was our universe going to do that or that or that? And the flatness of space shows that, and the fact that space itself, the boundary is accelerating in its expansion, shows that it's almost impossible for it to go back into that tiny little piece at the end. And in fact, on the basis of the holographic perspective, that couldn't happen anyway, because, as I say, space continues to expand to enable our universe to evolve. So if it came back into a small size, that wouldn't be able to happen. What seems to be more likely, and the finite piece is being more and more backed up by a number of observations, okay, that we probably don't have time to go into. But the flatness actually is very important, because the flatness enables the equivalence of energy and matter. If the universe wasn't flat, Einstein's famous equation, E equals mc squared, just couldn't happen. So there's a whole reason for every time we look at and find evidence for the universe being as it is, it needs to be as it is for us to be having this conversation. But in terms of its future, the latest cosmology is suggesting that perhaps tens of billions of years from now, our universe will have its finite end. And we don't know what will happen, but I'm wondering whether, you know, when we see a bubble grow in air and then it bursts and it just dissipates, you know, into the air. Well, perhaps at the end of its life, our universe dissipates all of its experience and awareness back into the infinite mind of God. You know? Mm-hmm. And the mechanism for birthing new universes seems to be not at the end of a universe's life, but actually potentially as part of its fertility period, when black holes are formed, and possibly supermassive black holes are formed, where if they're powerful enough, there's an extension, a theoretical extension to Einstein's relativity theory, which might offer a mechanism whereby young universes are budded off from the center of major black holes, supermassive black holes.
Fascinating. So the little tiles, the Planck tiles that contain a bit of information, then they develop into fractals, and the patterns that are more complex pieces
yes.
of nature?
Absolutely, because those tiles are absolutely minute. I mean, as I say, as small to an atom as an atom is to the universe. They're absolutely minute. So when on the holographic boundary of space, they come together in what's called attractors. And these attractors are clusterings of causation. So from those attractors, complex systems and fractals at all scales appear, yeah? Whether that's whether that's subatomic particles, and the way in which when elements change their characteristics, for example, from being an insulator to a metal, their electrons cluster in fractal patterns at that scale. We found fractal patterns that are actually the webs of intergalactic filaments are based on hundreds and thousands of light years across, hundreds of thousands, and sorry, millions of light years across. We found fractal patterns in the relic radiation that was left over from around 380,000 years after the first moment of the Big Breath, and now pervades all of space. In 2017, that the cosmic microwave background is found to be fractal. So we find fractals from the tiniest to the largest scale of the universe, and those fractal patterns are emerging as part of this meaningful information, yes, which just is all that is, but actually then is holographically projected to form the appearance of the whole world.
And how does dark energy and dark matter relate to these patterns?
Well, dark matter, we don't know fully. We really don't know, and that's very much a work in progress. I think what we'll find, though, is that both dark matter and dark energy will be pretty much able to be understood within the remit of what had been 20th century science of energy and matter. In other words, you know, I don't think, for me, that's not terribly exciting, because I think we'll get there. For me, the much bigger and most important thing is now, with this emergent 21st century whole world view of an informed and holographic universe, we're actually bringing the elephant in the room, consciousness, full center and front. And so, however cosmic mind has needed dark energy and dark matter to be part of this universe, I think that will come forward fairly straightforwardly in due course. The likelihood, what it seems to be, is that dark matter seems to be a very, very energy effective way of providing a scaffolding for visible energy and matter. And our universe is beautifully lazy. It doesn't waste energy. So if there's a way to provide a scaffolding for the visible through a very energy efficient dark matter, then I think that's what we'll find it's done. And the best candidate for dark energy is a tension within the fabric of space itself, which Einstein called the cosmological constant, which naturally occurred in his equations of relativity, but then he actually, in his day, felt that our universe was infinite. He didn't like the idea of a universe that had a finite beginning. So he took out the cosmological constant and then called it the biggest mistake of his life. And when you put back the cosmological constant, it seems a natural way in which a universe cannot just exist, but as I said, from the first moment of a big breath, evolve.
Mm-hmm. And so does this all mean that there's no need to search for a unified field theory? How do we connect the world of the big world and the little world of the quantum, because this information field is the unified field theory?
Well, yes and no. What I've done and what I did in the Cosmic Hologram was I showed a way of reconciling quantum theory and relativity theory, because if we go back to two very foundational laws of physics, the two laws of thermodynamics, with the cosmological understanding and evidence we have now, we can restate those two laws and expand them to be two laws of information or infodynamics. And when we do that, what we realize is the first law is that information expressed as energy matter of our universe is always conserved. That is at its simplest a description of quantum physics. The second law is that information expressed as entropy, or the informational content of our universe, always increases through time. So with the flow of time and the expansion of space. And so that second law is actually a description of relativity theory. So by restating two laws of thermodynamics to two laws of infodynamics, the first law of infodynamics is the simplest description of quantum theory, the second law of relativity theory. And we can see that they're complementary. So there is no irreconcilability. We don't need to quantize space-time, quantize energy matter, but everything is based on pixelated space-time. We can point the way to how they can be resolved very, very straightforwardly, in my view.
So I'm really interested in how this explains paranormal experiences, precognition, retrocognition, and you say in your book that experiences of non-local awareness that are capable of transcending space-time should come to be seen as innate in abilities. They're inherently non-local, involving informationally entangled perspective of consciousness that transcends space-time. So explain to us how this information universe explains why people can do clairvoyant work, healing from a distance, whatever.
Well, first of all, within space-time, the flow of time, it holds causality. So within space-time, the speed of light, the cosmic speed cop, right? Nothing can go faster. No signal can go faster than the speed of light within space-time. That is crucial for our universe to exist and evolve in the way that it does. But also our universe exists as a non-locally coherent and unified entity. So it's rather like if the universe was a balloon, the whole balloon on its surface is connected, yeah? But within the balloon, there is that experience of perceived separation and causality. Now, we know from quantum physics that our universe, for quantum physics to work at all, our universe needs to be non-locally connected. And even though that was a theoretical framework requirement, for many, many years, quantum physicists thought that non-locality only existed at the quantum scale. But then they started to do experiments and realized that you can non-locally entangle at much, much, much greater than quantum scale. So in the laboratory, they did it with organic molecules. They've done it with small diamonds, okay? But more recently, in 2017, researchers at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, were able to non-locally entangle photons of light in the laboratory with photons of starlight 600 light years away. But even
that meant they could convey information to each other?
Yes, because there's not a signal goes between them. When you're non-locally connected, you act as one. You act because you literally are beyond that within space-time signaling limitation, okay? But last year they went a step further. In August 2018, they were able to non-locally entangle photons of light in the laboratory, starlight 600 light years away, and light from quasars. And the furthest quasar, there were two quasars they connected with, and the furthest was 12.2 billion light years away, which meant that light left that quasar 12.2 billion years ago. So, you know, how far out do you have to go to say, yes, okay, this is a done deal. This is, our universe is non-locally connected, and yet within space-time, light is the limiting signal speed. And that is eminently sensible, because it means that cosmic consciousness is aware of itself in its totality as a universe, and yet it's learning and experiencing and exploring about its differentiated self through this differentiation and through the causality and the choice and the implications that are made throughout the universe. So that's why our supernormal abilities of telepathy, remote viewing, to some degree precognition, because time, the future seems to be a sort of a bow wave of possibility that comes into the present. Retrocausation, in my experience and the evidence that I have, suggests it's a misunderstanding of the way in which we seek to measure in the laboratory quantum events, and it's more difficult to explain than I think we've probably got the time for. It's very technical, but my sense is that retrocausation is only possible if it doesn't violate causality within space-time. Yeah, precognition is indeed possible as a sort of sensitivity to a bow wave of possibility coming into the present. Telepathy, remote viewing, remote healing, because of remote intention, are all naturally honed as supernormal abilities within the cosmic hologram.
So if your analogy, if we use the analogy of the balloon, the space-time operates on the surface of the balloon, and paranormal abilities operate inside the balloon, where we're not limited by space-time.
No, it's the vice versa, really. That within the balloon, the flow of time, and as the balloon expands, if I'm blowing up the balloon,
yeah,
the balloon expands as time goes forward, okay? So within that process, within space-time, speed limit of any signal is the speed of light. And yet that maintains causality, okay? on the surface, as it were, of the balloon is that non-local connectivity. So we have access to that non-locality while still living within space-time. What we can't do, essentially, is to change the past and therefore alter the present, because that would violate causality. And the only way that we can do anything of that way is somehow, if that doesn't happen. But we can telepathically connect, we can remote view, have sensitivity of things that are not through our physical senses. We can remote healing, non-local healing. Intention is certainly a naturally innate ability. But they are extraordinary abilities too, because we've chosen to incarnate as human beings within this universe to experience what being a human being's like. Yeah? So it's going to be very interesting, if we do survive and thrive as a species, where that takes us in terms of those innate abilities, and perhaps to experience the extraordinary in the ordinary and the ordinary in the extraordinary.
So I mean, are we looking at this like layers? Like there's space-time where we're limited by the speed of light, and then there's another layer where we don't have those limitations. It's non-locally connected. I mean, where is this non-local dimension or field or whatever we call it?
It's a non-local dimension. It's the reality. It's just that within the holographic projection that is space-time, there is an arrow of time. There is a level of speed limit. Hence causality. Hence you and I can feel this differentiation. We can reflect on each other. I can reflect on my garden and all around and the universe as a whole, while still at the most foundational level being part of it all. So it really is unity expressed in diversity. The most simplest way of expressing unity and diversity is through the way in which cosmic mind has essentially created the appearance of our universe. But when we can connect, which we can do, with multidimensional realms, those multidimensional realms are non-physicalized. So when we talk about physical reality, they transcend physical reality. But it also means that it's very challenging. For example, if someone has passed, has died, to communicate with this realm, because it's like a very, very high vibrational level, try to reach down to the depths of a sea. You know, it's like someone on the surface trying to communicate with somebody at the bottom of the sea. So, you know, one of the things that we are, I feel, very interestingly at, is if we do wake up and remember the oneness of all that is, and our part as microcosmic co-creators of our universe's reality, we can so much more open our awareness to these multidimensional realms and multidimensional communications and naturalize them within the wonder and the wholeness of our universe and its place in the cosmos. But while we're limited and holding ourselves down, and you know, our fragmented perceptions of the nature of reality mean that we're sort of, you know, drive our beliefs, drive our behaviors of separation, then it's like asking somebody who's been blind from birth to describe the color purple. It's very difficult.
But with our thought, we can change matter. We can heal something. We can change cell growth. We can have yeast release more oxygen. So just the mental can affect the physical. So there's got to be some kind of...
Of course, because everything is thought. Everything is information. Information is thought, is consciousness. Yes? So of course. But we are at the very beginning. We're like babies in terms of our realization of this. And you know, this in ancient wisdom, there's a lot of guidance that basically says until and unless someone is mature enough to be able to deal with these abilities, there will be a natural limitation on their use. Because these are incredible powers. These are the powers that would have been attributed to gods, small g. And we can't, and I don't feel we would be able to step further into this evolutionary process of conscious evolution. We have to grow up. You know, we're clever, but we need a lot more wisdom.
Right. 2 quick questions. What do you do for fun in the face of this deep thought? And what's your next book?
I'm having a lot of fun now. I love this exploration. And I'm a great film lover. I love film. I love gardening. I love being in nature. I love culture. I love ancient wisdom. And I'm curious. So my entire life is about curiosity and why and how and the wonder of a leaf to the wonder of a universe, you know, just fills me with joy. And I love music, I love dancing, and my next book is Gaia, Her Story, the story of a living planet, a living and evolving planet in a living and evolving universe.
And what will you say specifically in terms of that book? What about Gaia?
I'll move on from where I completed the Cosmic Hologram, that our universe, that mind and consciousness isn't something we have, it's what we and the whole world are. And after something like 9-10 billion years from the first moment of the Big Breath, Gaia was able to be born because of all the stars that had lived and died and filled, you know, interstellar space with these birthing clouds that were able to birth solar systems and planets like Gaia. And her story, not just from that moment, but her heritage going right back 13.8 billion years, and then that last 4.5 billion years where she has been our primary mother. And all of her exploration and evolution since then to this point. And the wonder of it. Gail, it's the most amazing story. And I'm having such fun writing it. And I'm in awe. I'm in awe just how exquisitely, gloriously our beloved Gaia has come into being and has birthed and has been this amazing planetary home for us and all her other children for the last 4.5 billion years.
I know you need to run, but is there anything else that you would like to include that we've left out? I'm sure we've left out a trillion things, but anything that comes to mind?
The only thing I'd say is what is, you know, this whole worldview of which the Cosmic Hologram is the framework and shows the evidence, is really a science of consciousness. And at its most profound, it's a science of love, because for me, love is foundational and connects everything. And I don't mean human love necessarily. I just mean this incredible love of a cosmos that births universes, to find out about itself and to explore, and how a universe can, from its simplest of beginnings, have this innate evolutionary impulse to experience and explore. And so for me, this is a science of love, of a universe that's innately loving, not in a sentimental perspective, but just that everything in existence, everything, has worth and value.
Is Thoth helping you write the book?
There are a number of amazing beings who are helping me write the book, so it's very much a team effort, and he's always there. But yes, there are others that are very much come forward, and of course this is the voice of Gaia. So for me, the deep listening, hearing and listening is to perceive her voice and her guidance as to what this is her story.
How beautiful. Can't wait to read it. Thank you so much. I'll let you go do your work. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Gail, you're so welcome. I'm so glad we could do this, and thank and bless you for all that you're doing. Let me know how this comes, and if I can help in any way and share the news of this within our Whole Worldview community, I'd be delighted to do so.
Thank you. Thank you.